their share of the multi-million-dollar Smithfield bypass for issues of lifestyle for Northern Beach residents. However, they have only committed $9 million over 3 years for a 7-year program of yellow crazy ant eradication. This will only partially fund the eradication of this pest ant, which would radically alter Cairns residents' way of life if not fully eliminated. You would not partially fund a road. Why only partially fund an eradication?
Oh, that is actually a very simple answer. Very, very simple answer. First of all, the cost of the roads there, it was the extension. We didn't do the bypass, by the way. That was 100% funded by the state government. So you're wrong there, and that's a Labor state government, not a Liberal state government. I'll make that point. Secondly, yes, we did do the bypass, the extension of the highway. That was something that was supported very strongly right across the whole spectrum, and it wasn't there for the convenience of a few holiday makers in the northern beaches. It was to try and catch up with congestion there. It should have been done years ago, but we're catching up. They should have been planning for 50 years in advance, not playing catch up all the time, and that's why we funded that. And as quick as the state government, who actually own the road, can plan it and do it, the sooner we can do it, which means mums and dads that are travelling into Cairns will have another hour or so in their family home without having been blocked in traffic. And of course the fumes that come from that, if you have a concern in the environment, it also has a major issue. Now with yellow crazy ants, the first lot of funding that went into that, this is the second round. The first lot of funding that went in there was in response to an application that was put by the Wet Tropics Management Authority. They asked for amount of funding. Now, they are funded in 3-year blocks, and they said they wanted funding, which was due to expire on the 30th of June this year. They have done a fantastic job, and it actually, first time ever in this country, and a big threat was on Christmas Island, where they've actually now adopted a management plan. These guys have adopted an eradication plan, and they have significantly, if you take the time to go and talk to the Wet Tropics, you'll find that they've actually eradicated it in quite a number of areas. The Wet Tropics came and put in a bid for the next tranche, which was for another 3 years. They asked for a total of $12 million, $3 million each from the state and the feds, a year for 3 years. And then they will reassess it to see how they're successful with their eradication, and whether or not, then they'll work out how much they need for the next 3 years. We stepped up and we've put the money in, the full amount that is required by was requested by the Wet Tropics Management Authority. We are now waiting for the state Labor government to actually put in, because they are joint managers of the Wet Tropics. That's how it is. So, take the politics out of this and look. We're going for a solution here. We're very keen to do it. We're working with them. We've given them 100% of what they've done. And people like Lucy Carter and her team are absolutely fantastic, not just down around the Edmonton, but the work that's up here as well. And let me tell you, the successes that they're doing out here wouldn't happen with any amount of money and without any commitment or any amount of commitment from the Wet Tropics Management Authority. What's happening up here, again, this is the uniqueness of a Kuranda community where they've come together and they've been absolutely outstanding. They're showcasing best practice anywhere in the country in relation to eradicating invasive species.
Thanks. Not said the Kuranda Range Road. Could we talk about the number of options that there might be feasible to get from the coast to the tablelands?
Can we take that across, please?
Everyone's got one. Yeah, I think it's very obvious that we need better access. The Kuranda Range, the original design limit was around 9,500 vehicle movements a day, and it's around that 9,000 to 9,500 a day now. So there's been some minor upgrades done over a period of time of state government. and that has, you know, you might be able to fudge the 9.5 a little bit further, but not very much. We do need some better access. There's all sorts of options, like the Quade Road keeps getting thrown around. There's other issues with that. There's tunnels get thrown around. There's issues with that. In 2004, TMR came up with a grandiose plan, a magnificent plan according to them, a complete new road, 2 lanes each way, all the way, 29 bridges in 10 kilometres. Okay?
Good plan.
Different from the current road. Okay? Some people might say that's a good plan. Malcolm Turnbull was the Environment Minister at the time, and he actually rubber stamped the environmental impact study on that. Okay? The only problem is, today's dollars, that's $1.2 billion at least to do. A lot of that will be tied up in administration and bureaucracy and all the rest of the nonsense. However, I think, and I researched this quite extensively a while ago, and with contractors, engineers, economists and all the rest of it, to use the existing footprint of the range, because I think that will have a far less impact on the environment specifically, easier to do, cheaper to do, much quicker to do, by just widening the current road on its current alignment, put a crash barrier all the way down the middle with gaps in it for animal crossings. Last thing you know, we've got to look after our cassowaries. They're very sadly in dwindling numbers, and other animals who then cross the road. But at the end of the day, that is a good idea to reduce, virtually stop, head-on collisions, because the Kuranda Range leads the country in the number of head-on collisions. It's the top of the list. It's unacceptable, and not only is it inconvenient, it's dangerous, and the only thing that keeps the fatality rate down on it, one fatality is way too many, but it's the generally low speed is why the fatality rate is fairly low. So, you know, of all the options, I think that's by far the easiest, cheapest, and most achievable option.
Solution.
Thank you. I'm not going to get into the politics of it. I think it's I'm concerned about the safety aspects in the current situation. I think it needs addressing and development because of the safety. I just see it as a safety issue as much as I do as a development one. And I would just like to see some real action on and some commitment with funding to really kick it off, instead of it seems to whenever I view the topic or hear about it, there seems to be like a lot of things at the moment, a lot of politics involved and a lot of conversations. Like a lot of people, I just would like to see some commitment and some action and start getting it moving.
So upgrading the range is what
Absolutely,
you're saying?
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Thank
Thank you. The last time there was a study, this about, Daniel said, was about 15 years ago, and that study was based on an assumption that Myola was the growth area for cows. Things have changed a little bit since then. You've seen the expansion of agriculture in the tablelands area. One of the keys, of course, is to bring those, not single semis now, B doubles to grab that economic opportunity. We've got to get those B doubles down to the airport, and to the seaport and the rail port. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to capture this opportunity in our area. Now, so I think that what we need to do, I think doubling the width of the Kuranda Range, it just means instead of 30 metres, the poor old cassowary's got to run, it's going to be 60 metres. And if you've got a brick wall, they don't usually follow pedestrian crossings. So with bits and gaps, it's just not going to work. I think it'll never, ever, ever get leaks. I just think it might be cheap and it might be an easy way, but it is not the way it's going to go. The other problem you have when you do that is you've got a bridge here, the Barron River Bridge, that still can't carry B doubles. There's a load limit on it, and for that to be redone, it means to say, first of all, you've got to build a second one, and then you've got to upgrade the first one to make it work. There has to be an easier way to do this. So what I think, and this is what I've been pushing for, I've found out they need about $10 million to upgrade this, the 15-year-old study, but we've got to be looking at broader options. And just a couple that I'm aware of that need to be considered. There is a road from Edmonton through to the Davies Creek. It follows the high tensile power lines. I understand that road there has a similar gradients to what you have on the Palmerston Highway. that would be a great way to be able to divert all of your heavy traffic down through that way and still link it into your airport and to your airport, your city port and your rail port. At the same time, there's also been talk about another option there, which is off Stanton Road, which goes up, it's north of the university. There's a spur there that can take you up and bring you in on Black Mountain Road. Now, but I'm saying that's another one they're talking about, and would require a tunnelling of about 80 metres to connect it into there. Now, I don't know, I'm not an engineer, but that would give you 2 lanes down, two lanes one way, 2 lanes the other way, so you're breaking the traffic up. Now, having said that, it would still require the duplication and also the doing up of the existing Barron River Bridge. So, and of course the Quade Road is one, you'd never put commercial heavy traffic down there because you would not feed that onto the Captain Cook Highway, but it is a way around. It is constructed. There's work certainly needs to be done on that to bring it back up to scratch, but that could be a way of diverting traffic or taking the pressure off the Kuranda Range. I think we need to put all the options on the table. We need experts that know what they're talking about to look at these options and come up with a solution on this. Solution, quite frankly, is not going to be just pouring more down the. I think you'd lose so much by just gouging out that and putting it down. And I think that from an environmental point of view, also from an economic point of view, I think that so we need to be looking at a broader option, and that's why I'm going for the upgraded plan on that. It will take time to do that, but I think it's important that we start planning for 50 years down the track instead of trying to put a band-aid solution on something that should have been done 20 years ago.
Thanks, Rob.
This is something close to my heart, and I'm sitting here trying not to get too emotional. The Kuranda Range, when I went to school, was probably the roughest ride. You know, and sadly, you know, there was a time that schoolmates of mine died on this range. And I drive up it like a madman. You know, I'm in a little car and I'm trying to keep up with traffic. And that's why you've got to drive like that on it. And I totally agree that we need to look at alternatives. You know, FNQ, North Queensland, we're different people. And Southerners have to realise that as well. And we've got to celebrate the emotion, but also celebrate the environment that we live in. We've got to be able to celebrate as well the romance of being in far North Queensland. And I'd say, let's upgrade that road so it's a tourist road and let's divert the heavy traffic. And that's what we have to do. And it's going to take that study. It's going to take the study and spending all that money to do it. But let's not shelve it for another 15 years. You know, because 15 years ago, money was spent on doing a study and all they've been doing is cutting out little bits and, you know, filling potholes and things like that. Let's get some real work done through the study and let's get an action and a timetable that it can be done in an environmentally friendly way, looking after cassowary, looking after other things as well, but celebrating us as a people, collectively living up here and the romance of far North Queensland. We're different. And if we have to have another road that's going to divert the B-doubles and take produce to the marketplace, let's do that. But let's have it that traffic doesn't actually be on that road when the B-doubles are on it and other things are happening as well. So there's a lot more work that needs to be done in this space, but let's not make that report a nice doorstop or look good in a parliamentary office to say we've done it. We need to action it. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, I've got a very quick one. There's lots of major, I'm sorry, Susie Grinter, for nursing. Mine is, there's lots of issues there. I'd love to talk about the railway actually with the road issue. But as Warren knows, we're going to lose our television. I'm the Secretary of the Residents Association. I'm here just to ask what we can do. We're going to lose our TV services from the end of the financial year, so we'll be going back to dark ages. I don't watch television particularly, but on behalf of the Residents Association, we did. So in Speewah, yeah. If we want to keep it, it was with the council, but now they're no longer going to provide the services. So it's now federal government issue, I believe. Warren,
I think I'll explain it to you.
Yeah, and I've got your email there, but if you can, just so I can relay it to the resident association, what are we going to do going forward? I mean, we don't have the contacts or whatever to actually go ahead with this. Unfortunately, Annie, our chairman, is not here, and she's the one that's more technically knowledgeable than I am.
And look, I'm happy to, you want to respond?
Yes.
I'm happy to do that. I've been working with Annie on this, I've spoken to her on a number of occasions. The problem, and I tell you what, I wish that Bob we've done a hell of a lot of work in relation to early days in getting not only TV but also mobile phone coverage.
Well,
Right?
I think, I mean, I had a big part to play in that one, so that's why I feel
you know that, yeah. So we did, and because there was zero here back in 1996, but we've covered it, and I'm really sorry that Bob's not here to be able to recognise the fantastic work he has done in that time. With regards to the television, though, problem is that the commercial stations, they make decisions as to where they're going to put in their transmitters and what they're going to do, where they're going to boost it into the directions that they're going to go on that. And that's something that cannot be directed by government. That is purely a commercial decision. What we do from a federal perspective is that we have a satellite system, and that's happening, in a number of places, as you know, outside. If they can't get, or the commercial companies are not prepared to do it, then the satellite system comes into play. But that's got the light. It's all the same channels, but it's Imparger and a range of others there. And people will say that they don't like the ads because they might be Alice Springs or Mount Isa or something like that. But nevertheless, the content is the same. It's just the ads that are different. And so that's what the federal government funds, is the satellite system for all of those areas where the commercial stations don't go. Now, sometimes, and this is what we negotiated a while ago with the council, they will actually invest in a receiver or transmitter for an area for the community. Now, all of those that were affected by this, Mareeba Shire Council has been doing that now for quite some time. I think there was a levy on I think it was on your rates or something or other for all of those in the affected area, and they covered the cost of that. Now, it's my understanding that the council has made a decision now that they're going to shut down that transmitter at some point in time. And I have said to, I've contacted the council to see what we could do in that regard, to see if we could encourage them to continue to maintain that. I've got to say to you, in all honesty, I never had a lot of interest from council in wanting to do it. They seem to have made up their mind, and I think this is something where we need to really encourage it. I know there's a petition starting to circulate on this one, and I've offered any support that I can do to assist it.
It's tabled, but I'm going to do a second one because we only got 176. It wasn't spread like the mobile one was. So we asked Kuranda to support us in this.
Well, it's a small area, unfortunately, that are actually affected by it. But and the only thing I say, and I said this to Anne, make sure they contact our office so that you get the wording right. And Tony knows this well. The wording right on a petition, so that it be tabled. But that's the way you've got to go on that. I can't ring up Channel 9 or Channel 10 or all those others and say, we want you to do this here, because it's purely a commercial decision. And unfortunately, that's the way it is. And we have, our plan B is satellite, which is available as well.
Well, satellite, but we'll be paying for that. Basically, it's fast, and we'll be paying for that. So, and it's a lot more, I gather, than what we would have been paying. But,
as I said, I'm more than happy to work with her on that one. But the easy solution is for council to continue to provide. But I don't think it's going to happen. The attitude that I got was basically mind your own business. It's a council issue.
Well, I suppose they're saying it's federal government, so there you go.
Do the best. But anyway, I'll continue to work with you.
Can you get the ABC? Can ABC federal government fund some sort of a transmitter for this? The billion. Well, some people would argue differently, but
And I'm, by the way, I'm an ABC watcher too, so. But look, even with the ABC, I mean, we don't dictate where they're going to put their transmitters. We fund them on a global budget, and they run their own business. And I'm telling you, and you would have seen recently in the ABC, they take that independence very, very seriously.
I mean, it's there, the transmitter's there, but
It
it's
is.
constantly wrong. It's constantly.
I think also this year there's been a lot of problems. We've had rather extraordinary weather this year too, well, it's not extraordinary. It's a normal wet season with respect. It's been a normal wet season, but it
Okay,
is
can we take another question from the floor, please?
I'd just like to ask people, there seems to be a continual conversation about it's either the economy or the environment.
Just a minute.
Hold on, oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry. Just the question of whether it's either the economy or the environment, and this seems to be a conversation that has had a lot. And I guess the question is whether looking at the economic kind of logic that's happening at the moment that doesn't seem to be taking us anywhere good in a hurry, and the fact that if we have environmental destruction, not just through climate change but through inappropriate developments and the rest of it, it's going to affect the economy eventually anyway. So is there more creative thinking around economic options, which might be, for example, local businesses involved in recycling? There might be, farming opportunities, small business opportunities, etc. Is there any kind of creative thinking going on in different parties about that kind of thing? And can we have possibly a bit of a change in the terminology? Because I think that the electorate is tired of that. They want to actually have a proper conversation about it, and it's not happening.
Can we direct that to each? And if you make it fairly quick, I think everybody's getting a bit tired to see what your priorities are.
Thank you for your question. I think it's absolutely essential that we look after the environment and the economy. If you're playing one against the other, you're going to have this argy-bargy, government's changing, you're going to have the pendulum swinging so far, and it'll end up being like a wrecking ball. So we do need to 100% manage the environment as best we can, and that's a whole debate in itself, as is the economic debate. So having big fat surpluses is one thing, and it's good, we should be heading in that direction. However, when there's important things that aren't getting funded, just so we can say, well, we've got a surplus, well, you've got to wonder there as well. We're heading down the path of having a whopping big debt. So rather than having a surplus, we should be spending that money paying off that debt. And it's, I haven't got all the answers, and it's a tightrope. But I think when the debate is switched too much to one way or the other, it's always going to be a mess.
Thank you. Even as the independent who's not even elected yet, just on a campaign journey, my inbox fills up with about 1,000 emails every day about climate change, and it seems to be at the moment for me a very political one. You've got one certain party or certain parties talking about pro-action to look at environmental best practice versus other political parties in opposition who are not as supportive of positive climate change action. So it seems a real political context at the moment. So I try to take that out of it. It'd be nice to take. You want to change the conversation. It'd be nice to take the politics out of it. I think the language would change in that. I think a lot of people. There seems to be a balancing act between mining and versus the impact of mining on the environment. The Liberals are still trying to run an economy, and they believe in capitalism, and that's a great thing, and I would be supportive of that. But also, as an independent, I've got to represent a community full of people who want action on climate change. So I'm walking a tightrope too. But to answer your question specifically, and I hope I heard you correctly, I think I'm an educator, so I think we need to invest money in education to educate and develop our communities better, to make better decisions for environmental technology and products that will help us actually just do more things in our community that find that nice balance between how to make money and also how to get the balance in with the environment. So it's a tricky thing, and I don't have all the answers, but let's take the politics out of it, and hopefully the language changes, and we and educate ourselves a bit more, I think. and take some leadership in environmental change.
Okay, Warren?
Thank you.
Thanks. Look, I got to disagree with the preface of the question. Environment, economy or environment. I think that, with the exception of my old mate Clive Palmer, which I have no idea what his views are on this, most of all the credible parties would argue that you can walk and chew gum at the same time. And where the conflict comes, and mate, I love the new ones coming in the political fray, but let me tell you, you're never going to take the politics out of politics. Mm-hmm. Where the conflict comes from, unfortunately, is how you do it. And this is where you start to get a divergence of ideas. But at the end of the day, what influences the politics on all sides is the collective view of the people. And you'll see that change over time. Now, I absolutely committed to making changes. I want to make sure that my kids, my grandkids, my great-grandkids actually are able to enjoy the value of the environment. But I think that we can do both, and we can manage it. And just as a point, I think Daniel made a mention of it in relation, what's the use of surpluses if you're not paying debt? Mate, for the first time in 13 years, we're actually retiring debt without having to borrow money to do so. And into the forwards, we're doing that all the time. So you can do it, but we're also, just in the reef alone, there is something like $2.4 or $2.5 billion has been invested into it. Problem you have, it's a bit like Indigenous policy. Somebody talked about 30 billion or something or other. It's easy to throw a figure in the air, but if it's not directed in the right way, you get absolutely nothing. And I think Indigenous example, everybody puts their hand on their heart and says, yes, we're totally committed to closing the gap. And yet they throw a bucket load of money at it, and look at it, it's just getting wider. So it's not just about the money, it's about the actions that are taken to make things happen. So look, please, I don't, as I say, without knowing Clive, everyone is trying to do it. It's just about the way in which you do it. And there are some that want to do it tomorrow. Others are saying that in orderly transitions, and it may take a generation, it may take 10 years, it may take 20 years, it may take 30 years. Sometimes the technology that you need to make the change is yet to be invented. But believe you me,
please, just to add on just one little question. That slush fund that was created was quite a significant amount of money. What happened to that slush fund?
Well, you call it a slush fund. I call it an investment in the reef, and there was a reason why it was put into the Reef Foundation. A very good reason, because you could put it into any institution, and I can tell. Sorry.
Originally asked.
With respect, you could put it into any institution, and they would justify their own projects, and they would blow a lot of money without spreading it. The idea of putting it into there, and I think it's very, very sound, is that you had a group that was in one element of it, in the board, that were there to leverage funds from private investment, which they do very, very significantly. Shake your head, you don't understand it. Private investment. Then you've got a panel in there that are well and truly very credible scientists that identify priorities and identify where the money needs to be spent. And so then they're able to spread that money across a broad spectrum, and you will find the reason it hasn't been spent at this point in time, that they've got commitments for a range of it, but they said they'll wait until the election is over before they start putting out the money. That's a fact. You disagree with it?
Okay, hold on. I agree. I think the issue with that is it was the method in which it was done. I don't think there's a question over the amount of money, it was the method.
But you also hear a lot of it.
Anyway, I'm not going to get Gary into
So, the question that we've got to ask, is it about the doing or the will to do it? The will to do it, because there's the resource to do it, there's the money to do it, but we see money being given to friends of governments all the time.
Name it.
Yep, money given to friends all the time.
General statement, name it.
The Greens are coming out with our policies, and they're fully funded as we progress along the line. But what I want to say is, this should be and this needs to be now, the election on climate change. And when I talk about climate change, I am talking about the economy, but I'm talking about people. So those three things, I think we can agree that those three things go hand in hand together. We can't act in silos on any of those aspects that impact on the lives of everyday people, because we talk about close the gap for Aboriginal people, and I'm glad to hear that we've got an agreement that the Productivity Commission report maybe isn't all it should have been. But we talk about the close the gap for Aboriginal people. I talk about the forgotten people, because there's people, all nationalities, all colours, that aren't being serviced by a government that looks for a surplus, while others are still suffering along the way. And some of the $75 payment, the $75 payment for people to pay their electricity bill, I tell you, I was at the house when it was announced. I was there for budget night. I was in budget lockup, and I ran a little side event afterwards. Went on SBS and ITV to talk about it. And I tell you that it was in the morning that the policy changed quickly, that $75 can also be attributed to New Start people. You know, when it was announced, it wasn't. So we know that policies of government can change, but I think it's the will to do it. The will to do it, and the will to truly identify that it needs to be done now. And let's not ponder this any further. Let's not wait for a new technology. There's enough technology now. The Greens also talk about taking the power companies off of the commercial world and bringing it back to government and making power cheaper. We've got to make sure that we have feed-ins that are happening up at Lakelands, and that's my country where I travel as well, that feed-ins actually result in a less cost to the end user as well. So let's not just fund all this big infrastructure or sign off on plans to the Daintree and other places because it's going to make us feel good or we're spending good government money, but let's make sure there's a socio-economic benefit to the end user as well.
Good one to finish on, Gary. I think we're running out of time now and everybody's just about had enough. I'll take one more question, then a quick summary.
Or not, but at the end of the day, that's about it.
Okay.
Yep, absolutely. It's funny, I'm evolving through the campaign as an independent. I get a lot of amazing feedback from people when they know that I'm staying true to my independent DNA and refusing to have a discussion about preferences and second preferences. And as an educator, I'm not really supportive of the how to vote card process.
Okay, so you're no second preference?
But I'll say this, and I'll be very quick. In the last few months, with some of the national policies I've seen from some parties around the country and the negative inaction in my own community, I would be very unlikely to recommend a Labor kind of government or preference. I'm a little bit concerned. I'm very concerned.
When you say you're very unlikely, are you saying that you haven't made a decision?
I believe I have. I'm very opposed to a lot of their policies, both locally and nationally. I'm really concerned about where they're headed. Absolutely.
Tony, first of all, let me say I think you're premature. The actually nomination time doesn't close until Tuesday, so we don't know who's actually standing, and to sort of jump up with some sort of political hatred for one or the other, I think you don't jump the gun. You wait until you see who all the candidates are.
Okay, Warren, so yours, whatever's the draw. Gary, yours?
No, it's not actually. I'm wrong.
Well, depends.
But Warren, you'll be dictated by head office?
Sorry?
You will be dictated to by head office?
I've never been dictated to by head office.
About preferences?
And to me, understand the two major parties, their preferences never ever get counted. Never. Okay? So it's what happens underneath that. There will be, the reality is there will be one or the other, and all I say to people, I think people find it offensive if you start trying to direct people one way or another, because they know what they want to do. The only thing you've got to do is you make sure that you indicate that every single is marked, because if you miss one spot, then your vote is invalid.
I will hold you to your word.
Gary?
My preference is to get elected. My preference is to have your support, and the preference deals that will be done as an informed process with my local my local branch members. So I'm going to be taking advice on whether we give a preference, because I'm telling my branch members we're here to win. So I won't be negotiating with anyone to go forward just so we can get over. And I can tell you that we talk about two major...
Gary, that's it, you've said no to... Okay, we'll take one more question. Who wants the last one? And then we're over. Any more? Or we'll do a summary? Bill? I don't think you don't. Do you want this?
Well,
probably should have been in the middle. But anyway,
Now quick.
I want to ask a question about the Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Act. Okay, so that's the EPBC. The present government hasn't seemed all that interested in it, and we even had Barnaby Joyce, when he was the Deputy Prime Minister, saying it should be wound down. So I think a lot of us know what it is, but we're talking about nationally threatened species, we're talking about national Ramsar sites, we're talking about nationally significant areas that have been set aside for environmental protection, World Heritage areas, and threats that may come along from any process, any sort of development or activity. Would your party, where does it stand? Do you actually want to strengthen it, or do you want to water it down? Because that's been put on the agenda.
It's too broad to make grandiose statements either way. I think each issue needs to be looked at specifically on its merits, with the environment in mind, the economic impacts in mind, to and fro, and also localised community impacts. It's not for me to come up here and tell you guys how you need to live in Kuranda, for instance, and what you should or shouldn't have in your own backyard. It's the same as over the Daintree with the power. I know there's a lot of people over there that want it. There's also a lot of people over there that specifically don't want it because they like living there for those reasons. Okay, it's not for me to go there and tell them one way or the other. So that's the thing. I've worked in environmental protection. Yeah, so
let me just clarify one thing here.
Sure.
National legislation or things like World Heritage protection.
Yep.
When the government has signed treaties to protect that sort of thing,
Yep.
it actually gets out of the realm of the individual politics and what
Yep,
people
it does,
like
yeah.
want, because we're going national again. So,
and some of those.
would you strengthen those protections where the government would say we must honor our commitments and our protections on Ramsar websites, or would you more or less say let's let the local people sort it out?
No, it sounds very simple to do it like that, but it's not. I do have a very big problem with handing our environmental decisions over to UNESCO and other groups like that, particularly when they're self-appointed groups, they decide what's going on here. And I've got a letter from and a lot of them, particularly when it comes to our oceans, you've got a bunch of people there that come from countries that don't even have one scrap of ocean, but they are deciding how we manage our own ocean. That doesn't make a lot of sense. So I'm not saying wind that back, but we need to look at the facts, we need to look at who's involved, and we need to stop outsourcing our environmental decisions to people in other places. It needs to be done in-house in Australia, and we need to make sure we get it right. It's very, very complicated without having extra complications from people from elsewhere.
Okay, thank you. Jack?
I'd like to see more community collaboration and influence over the decision making at local level. Thank you.
Thank you, Warren.
I've got to say, in relation to the EPBC, that's the child of the coalition that was party. We actually introduced it at Robert Hill's time. I was in the parliament when we introduced it. People will speak out. I think it's a good checks and balances there. And in spite of the fact that Barnaby might have said something, and he's entitled to do that, we don't gag him, I would challenge you to have a look whether there's been any effort to make the changes. I think we've got a pretty good balance there. I also think that it's from our own international, we don't live in a cocoon, we live in a global community, and I think it's very, very important that we work within that global community, because there are things that we can showcase here, and we can show some leadership in encouraging others to start to protect their own areas as well. And I think we do a pretty good job.
Gary, quick summary.
So I'm informed that the EPBC is not working, that it does need a rewrite. But one thing, it's there as a set of legislation, that we can use it as a head of power to do the amendments on. And I think that's an important framework. It probably worked for the time that it was introduced all those years ago. But our thinking has changed as a nation, and our thinking has changed around the environment and what needs to happen. I'm also for local decision making. So when I talk about local decision making, I talked about regional authorities earlier on tonight. Maybe we invest too much in one individual seat in the big house down there in Canberra and give them too much power through that legislation. So we need to reconsider, is it working for us at local levels and how we can improve it as well. But the benefit of having it in place at the moment is the head of power that we can do the amendments to.
Thank you.